everybody? Welcome to the MKUltra show. I am your host, as always, Carter M. Nelson. Very excited to be back with all of you tonight on Wednesday. Big show tonight. As always, it's going to be exciting. Very excited to get back into what will be a massive show. Our major story for tonight is the Fishback court case. So for those of you who have been following Fishback over the last year, just about now, he's doing good things in Florida. He's running a pretty solid campaign. The guy is working his ass off, and I'll be honest, his odds of actually winning aren't looking great, but I'd like to see what happens. But Jay Collins, one of the other individuals running for the Republican nomination for the governor of Florida, Jay Collins is suing Fishback, attempting to have him removed from the ballot, claiming that he had a residency in Washington, D.C. over the past 7 years, and that would make him ineligible under the Florida Constitution to run for the governor's spot. So that's the major development going on over there. In other news, Iran. As always, we will be covering a little bit of the Iran war, obviously, biggest thing going on right now, and there are more major developments going on with that, which includes the United States continuing to move significant firepower and military operations over to the Middle Eastern area, which is a signal of a preparation of maybe not a planned assault, but at least the ability to assault Iran to a greater capacity than we have been at recent times, which we have a few reasons for doing this. There have been multiple casualties now from Iranian missiles in the Jordan area, along with one in Iraq, which is a reason for retaliation, and we are continuously trying to bust open the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, what we've been talking about is this entire war is who can wait out the other. And the United States can only go on with this for so long, which means we need to bust that strait open because we have to get oil through there to ensure that the entire world's economy doesn't collapse in a tragic and magnificent fashion. A tragically magnificent fashion. So there is that, along with the House today passed the NDAA for the fiscal year of 2027, which includes a couple of provisions, one being the SAVE Act, which the House Republicans are continuously trying to include into legislature to get it to pass through the Senate, along with what is more interesting personally to me, because I don't think, obviously, the SAVE Act won't survive in this. But what very well could survive is one of the provisions is an increased merge with Israeli military along with the Pentagon, which would include essentially sharing more intelligence with each other and just increased cooperation with the Israeli military along with the military of the United States. So that could be a very big deal. And that's something that actually has a chance to survive in whatever the Senate ends up doing. Because the Senate will almost certainly not pass the current version of the bill, which just got through. Instead, what they will do is revise it, and that will be sent back to the House, and the two will cooperate with each other and attempt to find a deal which can be passed in order to ensure the economic continuous support of our military industrial complex. So it's a must pass bill. And the question is which provisions will survive. And like I said, the SAVE Act was included. I highly doubt that makes it to the final version of this bill, but something to keep your eye on is will the United States military increasingly cooperate and increasingly merge with the Israeli military? So that is something we will be covering. Before I get into our major story tonight, I would like to ask you guys, please like the video, subscribe. It greatly helps out. We're trying to build something big here, and any little bit of support helps. YouTube algorithm loves seeing those likes, so Please, if you are enjoying the content, help me out. Throw that on there so that this message can be reached to a greater audience, which is naturally the goal because it's kind of a necessity to build something. But before I hold you hostage with my random bickering, I'm going to go ahead and get right into this. James Fishback, as I was saying, he is in court. The hearing just concluded, and now, as of next Monday, we are going to find out whether or not he is allowed to stay on the gubernatorial ballot for Florida. So that's going to be a really big deal. Not necessarily just because I think Fishback will win. Because if I'm being honest with you, the odds of Fishback pulling this out and becoming the governor of Florida, they're low. They're extremely low, which is something that is unfortunate. If you were allowed to conquer any country, which country would you conquer and why? Well, I'm an American. So if I had to pick a country, we are going to go with my argument would be towards Canada, like the argument has to be, I feel like, between Mexico or Canada, you could argue, because, those are our borders. We have a legitimate reason and benefit to conquer. Canada would be my go-to of those two, just because the population, I think, of Canada is more Americanized in their culture than Mexico is. So I would probably lean towards Canada along with the oil there, which is a legitimate benefit. Outside of that, I mean, if we want to look at other nations which actually have some reasonable, I mean, Venezuela, which we've already in a way done, but I'd love to see greater provisions there, set it up as a colony state, because just the oil resources are so rich there, I think we could at least get closer to maybe not energy autarky, but we could reach a little bit of energy resilience. So when the Middle East blows up, because we have no control over how absolutely radical and insane many of those states are, a nation like Venezuela having control over their oil is great, which we've done. I actually, one of the few things that Trump's done that I kind of fuck with. I have to say, I don't hate the idea of a United States control over Venezuela because I do believe in the Monroe Doctrine, and I believe this Western Hemisphere, the Americas, those are under American supervision. So I have to say, I kind of support it. So I don't know, between Venezuela, Canada, maybe throw in Greenland, but yeah, one of those. But yeah, that's my answer to your question. But back to Venezuela, or wow, back to Fishback. So, like I was saying, I don't necessarily expect Fishback to win the governor's seat. He's coming in with very little name recognition across Florida. However, he has run a phenomenal campaign where he has hit every single county in all of Florida, which apparently he's the only governor or gubernatorial candidate to ever achieve this. And he's hit many of them twice. That guy is busting his ass off to get name recognition there. So he's running a phenomenal campaign, but I don't necessarily think it'll be enough. But what Jay Collins is trying to do, the guy expected to come third place, because right now you have Byron Donalds, who according to the polling is way, way higher than everybody else. It's not even a close race with him. But the second place spot is very tight between now Fishback and Collins, and it should have been a layup for Collins, but just because Fishback has run such a phenomenal campaign, he has done an excellent job at securing his chances at that second place mark. And why is that important? Why is that second place mark important? Well, because it is something that will give name recognition and essentially make his name a brand which can be sold in future political endeavors. That second place spot, it's something that can be used to for future campaigns, get donor support. They see that, hey, this guy does have legitimate support in Florida. He is a legitimate second option for them. So we have more reason to back him in future political endeavors. It also shows that what he's preaching does have some power and have some influence. So maybe if Fishback doesn't win, but let's say he takes 20, 30% of the vote, it will show the Republican Party, hey, there is a growing sentiment that this is what people want. People want truly America First candidates. People want a candidate who's not going to bend over for Israel at every chance he gets. People want a guy who legitimately preaches America First values, somebody who is, dare I say it, somewhat Groyper affiliated. So It will show political influence if you can even secure a solid portion. But that's exactly what Jay Collins doesn't want. I don't think that this is an attempt to remove Fishback from the ballot because they're scared he's going to beat Byron Donalds, because I don't think that's a very serious fear of theirs. Although I'd love to see it happen, obviously, I don't think that's a very likely circumstance, and they all see this too. They're not stupid. They understand this. What they want to do is completely take away any potential Fishback influence in the future of the Florida Republicans. That's something that they want to decimate, so they're going after him legally. And I have to say, this case, it's a toss up. It's a complete toss up on what happens. I'd love to sit here and tell you this is what the hearing, this is exactly what the judge will rule on Monday. I wish I could be the guy to tell you. But if I'm going to be honest with you, I don't entirely know. Odds are slightly in Fishback's favor currently. He's sitting at what some people are saying is like a 60% chance of getting through this, with a 40% chance of the judge ruling against him. And there's a few reasons for this. One, Fishback has legitimately had his primary residency in Florida over the last, I believe it's 7 years is the requirement. There's no doubt about it. The guy clearly grew up in Florida and has always held residency there. So that's his overall argument. It's, well, my residency has always been in Florida. But the reason that there's some debate for this, the reason that this is a legitimate and open discussion is Fishback also did reside in DC for a period of time during those 7 years. And on documents, he did list DC as his primary residency, which could potentially give legal reasons to say, hey, this is against Florida's constitution. He can't run. So that is incredibly unfortunate. And he also voted in DC, and that's an incredibly bad look. So hopefully that doesn't fuck him over, because that would be unfortunate. That would be a terrible way to end this. He does all of this work. It's looking good. He's done an incredible job. He's garnered much more support than anybody could have ever predicted. I mean, this guy came in as a complete no-name in the political atmosphere. Nobody knew Fishback when he started this campaign. Nobody knew that name. Nobody knew who he was. And by the end of it, I mean, he's trending all over social media. I think every single day you look on Twitter, and one of the trending topics, it's almost always something related to this Florida race because of how monumental and how persuasive Fishback is. I mean, he's a candidate that we haven't seen before. He's truly not only an America First candidate, but unlike many of the others running, Dan Bilzerian, James Fishback has run a great campaign and he's been persuasive. And he said things that it's real, it's legitimate, and it earns votes. So he's unlike what we've ever seen before. And because of that, he's a risk to the establishment. They don't want more people like him, so they're trying to shut him up and keep him down before he can prove that what he does works. Because again, like I said, I don't expect him to win, but polling even at 30, or not polling, but coming in at a 30% of the votings of the ballots coming in, if 30% of those say Fishback's name on them, well, that shows, hey, the people want something else. And we can break this down even more. We've seen that young people, they like Fishback. In fact, in many of the pollings, including the younger generations, he's above Donalds. And I don't think that'll win him the election because so much of the voting base in Florida is elders, it's boomers. And we all know boomers. Boomers love to fuck over our nation. That seems to be their favorite pastime. What is the worst decision we can possibly make for Florida? And that's what the boomers will do. Every single time. They look at a ballot and they say, huh, hmm, which of these candidates will fuck over our country on behalf of both the Democrats who want to move us further to the left, as well as what will ensure that more of my money goes to Israel? And every single time they check off whatever candidate is getting sucked off by IDF agents. So I think the boomers will fuck over Fishback in Florida. But still, that 30%, it's electric. It says, hey, the future voters, they want Fishback. They don't want Byron Donalds. And that changes the entire political atmosphere. So it is a very big deal if he can take home a significant part of the election base. And that's why they're trying to shut him up. And we'll see how this goes. I'll report on it on Monday, no matter which way the results are. All of us, we need to be hoping and praying that this judge will rule that Fishback deserves to stay on the ballot. Because if we break it down, I mean, sure, he lived in DC for a little bit, but he's clearly a lifetime Floridian. He grew up in Florida. His 16-year-old driver's license is a Florida license. Even when he voted in DC, he provided a Florida license. And the person running the voting booth allowed him to vote. I mean, this guy is clearly a Floridian through and through, so it would be a disgrace to remove him from the ballot. The Floridians deserve to be able to vote for who they, excuse me. The Floridians deserve to be able to vote for who they think the best candidate is, and if they think it's Fishback, well, then I think their voices should be heard. So hopefully he stays on. That will be an ongoing story that here on the MKUltra show we will keep track of. So if you don't want to miss that show a week from now, if you want to know what happens, subscribe, please. I'm begging. In other news, Iran. Back to Iran because again, it's continuously the biggest thing going on. We all know this. I mean, I know I talk about it every day, and I'm sure some of you are getting tired of hearing it, but it's a news show, so we're going to keep talking about it. Here's what's going on over there. We are moving significant firepower to the area. And when I say firepower, here's what I mean. I mean, we are transporting B-1s, F-16s, and F-35s. That's what's being reported, along with some other military materials. We have also moved hundreds of medics into Germany to assist injured troops in the Middle Eastern region. So we are preparing for something big. And what military experts are saying is this doesn't necessarily mean something big is going to happen. But what it does mean is Trump and the administration is preparing to have the choice to escalate things further. And we have to do with that is we need to compare it to what Trump and the administration themselves are saying. And it doesn't also stop at just these different fighter jets, the B-1 bombers. It also includes we are moving cargo flights to the US bases in the Middle East, which are currently housing spec ops, which have been in the first part of this, the first part of Epic Fury. The spec ops were being used essentially for search and rescue. So a plane goes down, the spec ops go in to extract the pilot and try to get the plane out of there so the Iranians don't have access to that technology. But these spec ops, as we all know, are perfectly capable of a number of missions. So this doesn't necessarily mean we're preparing for more search and rescues. It could mean that we're preparing for other spec op related missions. But as I was saying, all of this movement doesn't necessarily mean there's an escalation, but it means that we are preparing for the choice of escalation. And what the Trump administration is currently saying, let me break it down for you. Donald Trump is saying, look, if you shoot a cargo ship going through the strait, we are going to massively inflict damage upon you. And what he's threatening is power. We're going to go after their different power facilities. We are going to go after their bridges. So we're essentially threatening to go after their infrastructure. And another thing that military experts are warning is this could potentially be technically a war crime because if we can't have solid proof that these things are being used for the military purposes, it would count as going after civilian targets, which is illegal. But I mean, there's workarounds for that. International law doesn't mean shit, especially when you're the United States. So don't think about that too hardly because you just can't take international law that seriously. War crimes only exist for the losing party. You think that we went after the British for carpet bombing Germany during World War II? Of course not. Of course not. We don't give a shit. Do whatever you want as long as you win. You know who we went after? The German generals in the Nuremberg trials. You go after the losing side. The winning side can commit as many war crimes as you want. That's the truth of it. Commit war crimes, but you better fucking win if you do it. But honestly, if you lose, they'll still find a way to put war crimes on you that you didn't commit. So, yeah, yeah. International law, it's barely real. It's barely real. It's only used to persecute political enemies and enemies of war after the conflict. It's not real for the winners. But yeah, so we are threatening to escalate going after their infrastructure, and that's what all of these signs point towards. We are saying Iran, if you don't come to a peace agreement, if we don't have a ceasefire, if you don't let open passage through the strait, we are going to bomb the shit out of you like we have been doing. And we are now at, I believe, 11 days of continuous strikes, the biggest strikes we've seen throughout the war, really. I mean, since the very start of the war, when we destroyed their entire leadership, when we killed all of them. And what we're saying to their current leadership is pretty much, hey, get a peace deal or you're all dead too. The issue is that just doesn't really work with the Iranians because they're Islamic radicals who view this as a survival war. They are saying, hey, Israel wants to topple our government, which is accurate. And Israel's saying it. We want to topple their government. So Iran's like, we can't just give up all of our leverage, and their leverage is the strait, or Israel's going to be the one to finish the job. Maybe not this year, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now. That's the same reason why they have so much uranium, so much enrichment of uranium. And that brings us to our next topic on the war. We are also preparing to bomb the shit out of Pickaxe Mountain. And why is this important? Well, obviously, we attempted to destroy all of their abilities to enrich uranium and all of their uranium that they've enriched, right? That's a big part of why we've been bombing the shit out of them over the last couple of years. We did this, I believe it was 2024 that we did massive strikes on them as well. It might, no, it's 2025, June 2025, I believe that we did massive strikes to destroy their ability to enrich uranium. But what Israeli intelligence is telling us is that they've moved massive amounts of highly enriched uranium into the depths of Pickaxe Mountain. Now, what could this mean? For one, Israel could be lying to us. We don't know. Israel is not a trustworthy ally, and they don't want us to back out of this. So they're saying, hey, job ain't finished. There's more you got to do. And the funny part is, they're not even willing to assist us. And there's two sides to this. Some are reporting that the United States is trying to keep Israel out of this because we don't want this conflict to expand, which is something I've been talking about over the last week, the potential of this conflict expanding through the Gulf region. But simultaneously, there's the chance that Israel won't assist because we are no longer interested in toppling the Iranian government. And Israel's like, well, we're not going to half-ass it. Either we're going to topple the regime or we're not. So there's two ways to look at that, but they don't want us to back out, so they're going to tell us, hey, you know how you don't want Iran making nukes? Look over here. This is where they're all at. They're at this mountain range. But now Trump is preparing to basically not destroy the uranium because we're not going to be able to we won't be able to penetrate deep enough to hit where this uranium is likely buried. But what we would be able to do is destroy all the passageways there, essentially making it incredibly difficult for the Iranians to recover. So that's going to be the goal with that. The question is, do we trust do we trust Israeli intelligence well enough to make it worth bombing the shit out of Pickaxe Mountain? So we will see what goes there. And other news on the Iran front, the House today approved the National Defense Authorization Act with a vote of 216 to 212. And to give you a breakdown of what this is, it's an annual policy bill, essentially al- allocating funding towards our military and deciding how that will be carried out. However, typically this is an incredibly bipartisan bill. It's considered a must-pass bill. So you see both sides coming together and passing it with flying colors. However, this year it only passed with a 216-212 majority, and there's a few reasons for this. One, The House Republicans included the SAVE Act in this. The SAVE Act is something we've been talking about. It's something that the House Republicans are desperately trying to get through the Senate. And their goal is to take a bipartisan bill like this and slap the SAVE Act onto it to say, hey, now you have to pass it. And another part of it is there's a provision, and this is the big story. There's a provision in the current act which says that we will have an increased cooperation with the Israeli military and increased shared intelligence between the Pentagon and the IDF and Mossad and all that. Israeli intelligence. Essentially, we will increase a merge between the two militaries. And it's not a literal merge, but it will be a significant increase in cooperation. So that also caused some pushback from House Democrats and a total of 7 House Republicans. And the reason this vote was so close, what we had was 7 House Republicans voted with the Democrats on this. However, we saw 6 Democrats vote with the Republicans. So we saw a 6-6 trade, and then we had the 7th Republican who voted on the side of the Democrats, canceling out the trade slightly, giving the Democrats a +1 on this one. And that was Thomas Massey, unsurprisingly, something that a lot of people predicted would happen. But because the Republicans have a majority, losing essentially instead of losing 7 because 6 Democrats swapped over, they only lost 1 vote, which allowed them to still pass this bill with a four vote majority. Like I said, 216 to 212. But now this will move to the Senate. And what's going to happen in the Senate is it's incredibly unlikely this will pass in its current standing because it will require 60 votes. The Senate has failed to pass the SAVE Act because they can't break through the filibuster with a 60 vote majority. So, likely, what will happen is the Senate will redraw up this bill and it will likely have a removal of the SAVE Act and it will go back to the House. So, we'll see how long it takes to pass it. It'll be essentially dependent on how long until the House Republicans will agree to remove the SAVE Act from it, which I think will likely happen after the August recess. So it'll probably be a little bit before this actually passes. But, but I highly, highly expect the merger to contain in it because even though the Democrats claim that they're pushing these anti-Israeli sentiment, many of them are still pro-Israeli. They're just anti-Netanyahu's government. So that's the situation. They still are very, very pro-Israel and are fine with Israeli influence, just not Netanyahu specifically. So they'll still likely allow that provision to be included. So what will more than likely happen is the Senate will remove the SAVE Act. The Israeli merger will still be quietly included. It will go back to the House and eventually it'll pass in that way. So I do expect this merger to still go through. Which means, although it seems that public sentiment of Israel, even though public sentiment of Israel is at an all-time low, the governmental force is still going to be pro-Israel, even the candidates who pretend to not be. Because again, like I've been saying, these anti-Israeli Democrats, they're not really anti-Israel. They don't care about Jewish supremacy that is widespread in America. They don't care about Jewish influence. What they do care about is the right-wing government of Israel. They want it to be a left-wing Jewish supremacist state, essentially. That's their goal. And that's what you have the conflict of. The Republicans are currently pro-Israel because it's Netanyahu's right-wing Jewish government over there. When that eventually flips, and I wouldn't be surprised if Netanyahu loses, the Democrats will all be pro-Israel, and the Republicans will still be pro-Israel, but they'll be against the left-wing Jewish state. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, they're all controlled by Jewish supremacists. That never changes, and that's why this act will pass. That's why the merger will go through as a part of the NDAA. The NDAA, it always goes through. Always. We never see it not pass. It always goes through with bipartisan support. The question is just how many rewrites will it take? How long will it take? And so I fully expect this to go through. Just it won't go through immediately because the Senate won't allow the SAVE Act to go through, which is unfortunate. It's like the only good fucking part of this. The SAVE Act is the only thing we want to see. Like, yeah, we should probably secure our elections. It's fucking ridiculous that Democrats are voting against securing our elections, especially when we have what I was talking about the other day, is New Jersey is finding that the DMV was giving non-citizens, they were registering them to vote because they were getting an ID. So it's ridiculous. We know there's voter fraud. We know there's non-citizens voting, which seems very likely 2020 was in fact a stolen election. But it's to Democrats' advantage, so they're fine with our elections being corrupt as long as it's to their advantage. Like, if we're not careful, in 20 years from now, we'll be fucking Romania, who is overturning elections after they happen. So it's a joke. It's a giant joke. The only good thing in part of this NDAA isn't going to go through. It's the only thing that'll likely be taken out. And we'll see. Maybe it'll reduce slightly the amount of funding we put into this because many in the House and the Senate are opposed to the conflict because they don't view that Trump properly went through the legal way to go to war and he didn't properly seek congressional approval. But it's going to pass eventually. It always does. And it will likely include the provisions to merge the Israeli and the American government, or not governments, militaries, because whether you like it or not, both sides are still bought out by Jewish supremacists who all love Israel. So, even if they pretend to not. It's a game, it's a joke, and I mean, we see this even with like Mamdani. Mamdani, oh, I'm gonna arrest Netanyahu. I'm gonna do it. Trump, please arrest him. He backs out immediately. I actually can't. Trump, please do it for me. Mamdani's sitting over here, just sitting like this. Trump, will you arrest Netanyahu, your ally, for me? No, he's not gonna fucking do that. Grow up here and do it yourself. But you can't trust any of these politicians because they're all lawyers. They all speak in legal jargon and they conceal their intentions and they say things that they're going to do and then they make the excuse, oh, this higher power is preventing me from doing it. It's like, well, just fucking do it. Grow up here and just do it. Because guess what? You can. There will be consequences, but you can do it. You actually do have the ability to do it. So just fucking do it. But yeah, you can't expect any of these politicians to ever take our side, and they're always going to be pro-Israel. It's just the question of how do they portray that. That is what it is. That's why we're not just against Israel, we're against Jewish supremacy. It's different. They're not totally the same. Israel is the embodiment of Jewish supremacy, but it still affects us here in America. And these Democrats, they're against the current Israeli government, but they're not actually against what's going on in America on behalf of Jewish supremacists. So that's the issue. But on that note, I'm going to begin wrapping up this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like the video, subscribe. It helps me out greatly, and it helps us get this message out there. So I appreciate it. Also, share this video with anybody you think that would enjoy it, or just share the channel, or share a clip or something. I don't care. Share something. It helps out. But thank you. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, I'll leave the stream running for a few minutes, and I will do my best to answer any of those. During that time, I'll go ahead and recap everything we talked about. We have Fishback. Fishback is currently in his court case. It's looking like a coin flip whether he's going to be allowed to remain on the ballot. Obviously, the goal is not to prevent Fishback from winning the election because that's not very likely, but it's to prevent him from having influence and for people who have a similar mindset as him from having an influence in the future of the Republican Party. In other news, the United States is gearing up for the potential to severely escalate this conflict, including a bombing of infrastructure, going after Iranian leadership again. All cards are on the table, and that's why we're moving so much equipment over there. That's why we have B-1s moving in, F-16s, F-35s, cargo flights to our Spec Ops teams over there. So that's pretty major. We have the ongoing developments with Pickaxe Mountain. We'll see how the Trump administration plans to address those. And finally, we have the incoming merger with the Israeli military with our Pentagon. So that'll be great. That'll be fun. We'll keep an eye on all of that. If you want to see how all of this develops, subscribe. I'll tell you. I'll be here. I ain't going anywhere. They can never shut me up because I'm a G. I'm a G. What can I say? Type shit. Is Russia involved with Iran at all? Yeah, yeah. Russia, Iran, and China. It's like an axis over there. So, um, the reason why we are pretty opposed to the Iranian government, and a big reason why we are pro-Israel, is because Russia's influence in the area and China's influence in the area is through Iran. And so they want control over the oil, where it goes to. They want that economic control. But we also need control of the Middle East because, again, about 20% of the world's oil is moving through that area and it's coming out of that area. So both parties are looking for control and influence over that area. So we go with Israel. Why? Because Russia, since the Soviet days, they've pretty much adopted a third worlder policy where they attempt to influence third world nations because they're easier to control and they can use their militia groups and they're less likely to go towards the West. While the West has been setting up states in what are more so third world areas, such as Israel, like we did after World War II, to grow our influence in those areas to essentially combat those third world states. So Russia is influencing the Middle East through Iran, through the different terrorist organizations, while we are trying to influence it through the Gulf countries with Israel, with Bahrain, with Kuwait. We're trying to get in with the Saudis. A big deal that we have recently done is we made a massive nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia. And what this deal is that under supervision, they will be able to begin enriching uranium to the point of civilian purposes, so energy and all that, those purposes, which has grown concerns because it's like, well, if we allow them to begin enriching uranium with how unstable that area is, at any point we could have another Iran type threat on our hands, where we have a nation which is enriching uranium past the point that we have allowed through our trade agreements and through our nuclear deals. The reason Iran is even able to re enrich uranium is we previously made deals with them to be able to enrich it to a civilian level, but they cut that off and they stopped allowing for inspections, and now it's suspected through Israeli intelligence that they are enriching it to, I believe, the 60% mark, which makes it not that difficult to get it to the 90% mark, which is where they need it to make nuclear weapons. So Iran, here's the thing, people joke about how, oh, Iran's been just a month away from a nuclear weapon since the 90s, and it's like, that partially is true. The question is, will they actually do it? They're not necessarily working towards building a nuke. What they have been doing is enriching uranium to the point where if they find the necessity to make a nuke, they can do it in a short period of time. So that's why we're going after them. But yeah, we're making the Saudi deal with them to allow them to begin enriching uranium under our supervision to increase our relations and influence in that area through them. So we have this combative nature where Russia's going after the more third worldish, the more radical extremists of the area, while we are essentially attempting to westernize the area. And that's why so many of them hate us, is we attempt to westernize it. Russia has a tendency where they do allow for their culture to continue there. They allow for them to continue to be third worlders, to be Islamic radicals, and they will support that while we attempt to westernize them to make them more reliable allies for us in the future. So, yeah, yeah. Russia, Iran, and China are in a tripartite axis, if you will. That is how Russia influences the Middle East. That's how they have control over the oil in that area. Because despite Russia being one of the major producers of oil, they still need that economic influence in the Middle East because, like I've been saying, it's a fifth of the world's oil is coming out of the Gulf area. So it's a crucial ally for them. So absolutely, absolutely, Russia is involved with Iran, and that comes from the Soviet days. But yeah, that'll be all I have to say on that, I guess. So thank you guys so much for watching again. Please like the video, subscribe, it greatly helps me out. Share some of my content, share the channel with people you think might be interested. Because, every little bit of support helps greatly, and it's the only way that we can ever progress and become a legitimate movement and become a voice in this and create legitimate and radical change is going to be through getting our voice out there. And we do it by communicating with each other. So Thank you so much for watching. God bless all of you. May he look kindly upon you. May may great things come to every last one of you. So again, thank you for watching. You have a great rest of your night. I'll be back here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Hopefully, I'll try not to be late. But thank you again for watching. So long, peace out, and God bless you.